So we're going to go ahead and stay inside the tutorial 23 scene. And inside of here, what we're going to do is take a look at the items for our save points. We have the save point where the player starts, but then we have the kill box. And one of the things we haven't actually defined is what happens with the kill box. If you recall, the only thing that we actually do is if he touches it, it just simply sends him back to the start point. Well, what we want to do is actually add to that. We want to make sure that the lives actually get subtracted, and that the player, when he lands, no matter what state he's in state meaning whether he's the Fireball Mario or whether he's the large Mario, no matter what state he's in, he's going to reappear as the small Mario. Alright, so let's go ahead and start working on that. We want to go ahead and just basically work our way through what it's going to take to set all those elements up. In order to start with, if you click on either the Mario player, or if you go to your scripts folder, either one, you'll have the scripts, and you just want to double click on the spawn safe setup, or with the Mario player, you can just double click it from here as well, either way. And once it loads up, so if we go to our spawn safe setup, or you double click to open it, what we want to do, again, we just want to go through and add a couple of variables, and then set up the basic system so that when he lands on this, his player state changes to the small one, and then spawns at the start point. Alright, so we already have the sound file that we can actually use as well, and we'll need to set the length of it so that we can make sure that it plays out all the way through. First thing though, let's go ahead and start off with a couple of private variables. One of the private variables we want to make is just going to be a toggle for a losing a life. If you remember when we were working on our first one, when we did the adding the life, we actually had to set a toggle so that it didn't actually add any more than just one to the HUD. Same thing for losing the life. In order to make sure we only capture one subtracted from, we're going to just turn a toggle on and off on it. So in this one, we'll set this one to a Boolean statement. And the current state for this one, we could go ahead and just set this one to false. Alright. And for this one, we'll just say again, we'll just do, that's going to be a toggle for losing a life. So we'll just turn it on and off that way. Alright, and another variable, if you notice down below here, we actually have our player properties that we were getting from our start. Let's go ahead and make sure we've actually initialized it up here. So we'll say the private variable pprop. There we go. And this one is just going to be a variable to hold the player properties. Alright. Once we have those, we can go ahead and start to use them inside the code here. Now, we know that we want to subtract the life if the player jumps off the side of it, and we've already got our lose life option here. So let's go ahead and make an update. So we'll make an update function. So just at the bottom of the code here. With the update function, we'll go ahead and just do a quick check. And we're just going to check to see if lose life is actually true. And if lose life is set to true at any point here. Let's put this down a few so you can see it all the way down there. So, if our lose life equals true at any point, then we want to go ahead and take our player property. So remember the pprop right here. This is the player property option. Inside of here, we have our lives. So we're just going to be accessing lives from here. So we're going to say pproperty. So player property dot lives is going to equal itself minus 1. We just want to subtract 1 from it. So we'll say minus equals 1. I'll go ahead and comment here. This will just be subtract the life. Alright. And then we just want to turn off our lose life. So we'll just say lose life is going to equal false. Alright. So we'll just do turn off lose life. And that'll allow us to just grab one of the life, subtract it, and then that'll also subtract from the HUD as well, because it's already set up and connect it to it. So we'll do the option here. We're just going to say check for losing life. And then for update, we'll just call the loop. There we go. So that gives us our basic setup for the update. So every time we turn on the lose life, it's going to subtract 1 from the player properties lives option right there. And then what we need to do is actually set it so that we can call it up. That means that when the player enters the trigger box and the collider, the player is hitting the thing called the tag called killbox. Well, if you remember from our hierarchy here, if we go to killbox, the tag name is killbox right there. So we want to go ahead and set this area up right here. Let's go ahead and just do a little bit of coding on this one to set all the properties up for it. First thing is that we could start off with it would be fine to actually start off with the sound playing the death cycle, so that when he hits it, it'll immediately start playing sound. But then after that part, let's go ahead and turn on our lose life. So we're going to say lose life is equal to true. That way we'll be able to go down here and subtract 1 from it. Once we lose the life, let's actually do a yield statement and wait for a couple of seconds. We're going to do the wait for seconds, and this one I'm actually going to call directly 2 seconds. What you could do though is you can actually call it to the length of the audio file being played. That way if you change the sound file, it'll just play to whatever length it's supposed to play to. So we're going to make sure that it actually plays the file out, but then at the same time, one of the things that if you start doing this instead of just doing the code this way, but you're starting to test it out, you'll notice that when the player, if we actually change the player state to small, when the player hits the edge over here, if he was large, he's going to automatically go back to here, show, change, and then drop. And we don't want him to actually be seen while he's changing to the other state, just in case it's a possibility. We want to just turn off his rendering state for that one. So we'll just make render for this one is just turn off the enabled options for it. So we'll just set this to false. And then we're going to use our player property option again. This one we're going to actually get player state, and we're going to actually make it equal to our current player state enumeration and set it to the small Mario. Alright, and that one, if you remember, inside of player properties, the player state, player small Mario, and we've actually set our player state variable to equal the enumeration. That's what we're calling up right here. So we're just making the access to it, calling it up, and then setting it here. And remember, this could actually be replaced with 1. And just like what's inside of here, the representation of it could be 1, so you could actually just set it to equal 1. Alright, so what we want to do, set that one. And in order to change it, now remember, in order to change Mario, inside player properties, you have a change Mario checkbox right here. If this isn't checked, if it is not a true statement at any point, he won't change to the next player state. So if you remember, in order to change him, we need to access the change state one. So we'll say the player properties, and we'll do the change Mario, and we'll set this to true. So he's going to, inside of here, in the update function, it's the if change Mario is true, then set player state. And our last state player was actually the Mario Small. Alright, so we've been able to change it, and just remember, inside of all the cases for all these, it sets it to false after it's changed over. So we have the player Mario going to small state, and then after he's changed to small state, we want to do a check real fast. Is that the current lives right now? I think it's like set to 4. So every time he loses one, it's subtracting it. We want to make sure we do a quick check here so that he doesn't go below 0. All right. So we'll just go ahead and do if the player property for this one on the lives is going to be equal to 0. So if the player property lives is equal to 0, let's just return out. Alright, and then what we can do after that is that if it isn't equal to 0, so it's greater than 0, then we'll just say that the rendering is going to be turned back on. So we'll say render.enabled equals true. Alright, and that should set us up for the basic part for the kill box when he jumps off the side. Let's double check here, make sure we don't have any errors. And when we play, Move it off to the side so you can see here. I want to walk off the edge. We fall. If you can hear the sound, it's actually playing the sound. It counts 3 seconds. And the lives actually change there. So we fall, goes to 1. I'll go this way. He falls, goes to 0. Alright, and notice he doesn't come back. He's lost all his lives. Player goes to 0. It hasn't stopped though. Okay, so all we've done at this point is that it goes to here and it just breaks out. So we're at this point. And that means that we need to go ahead and set up some other files to actually load a different level if the lives actually gets down to 0. And we'll set that one up in a different file. But for now, what we do have working for us is the player gets to the end of the kill box. He hits it. Loses a life, updates on the HUD, drops back in as a small Mario. Alright, so that should finish us off for the spawn safe setup. I'll go ahead and turn this one off, and we'll get going in just a little bit on our next one, which will actually be the Goomba setup, and we'll set him up so that he'll be able to attack the player character.